Welcome to the Wisdom Time YouTube channel. Today, we are diving into a question that I think a lot of people have probably wondered about. We're going to explore why so many languages use a masculine pronoun, he, for a being, God, who is almost universally understood to be genderless.
I mean, it seems like a total contradiction, doesn't it? On one hand, you have this core theological idea that God is above and beyond human categories like male and female. But then, on the other hand, our language, from the most ancient texts to the way many people pray today, just defaults to he. So what's the deal? Is this just an old mistake that stuck around, or is there something way deeper going on in the very blueprint of our languages?
All right, so here's our game plan for figuring this out. We're going to start with the pronouns themselves, then we'll look at why the neutral word it just doesn't work in this case. After that, we'll kind of time travel back to see how ancient societies literally built their values into their grammar. And all of that leads us to a specific grammatical rule that really cracks the case, helping us see if this is truly about gender or something else entirely.
Okay, so let's really set the scene here. We see it all the time in English with the word he, and it's the exact same story in languages like Arabic. You have a being that is, by definition, beyond gender, but the language we use to describe that being is, well, gendered. To really get to the bottom of this, we need to completely shift how we're looking at the problem. And this is the absolute key, right here. What we're digging into isn't a debate about what God is or isn't. It's actually a fascinating puzzle about how language works. The answer we're searching for isn't in theology. It's hiding in plain sight, right inside grammar. So, the first question that probably pops into your head is, well, hold on, why not just use a neutral pronoun? Like it. And that's a great question. But it turns out that it comes with its own set of problems, its own historical baggage that makes it a really poor choice. And this gets right to the heart of it. Just think about it. If you're trying to describe a supreme, all-powerful being, are you going to use the same word your language uses for a chair or a bug or something that's considered worthless? No way. Using it would actually communicate the exact opposite of what you're trying to say. It would imply a lack of consciousness, a lack of value. So you can see the dilemma ancient speakers were in, right? They had a choice to make. On one side, you have pronouns for personhood, for consciousness, he and she. On the other, you have a pronoun for things, it. To show respect, to convey the idea of a conscious being, they pretty much had to choose from that first person category. It just wasn't an option. But okay, that just leads us to the next logical question. If they had to pick between he and she, why did he so often win out and become the default? To answer that, we have to remember that language is never created in a bubble. It's like a fossil record of the cultures and societies that built it. Let me walk you through how this happened. We're talking about languages that are thousands of years old, born in societies that were, for the most part, deeply patriarchal. In these cultures, public authority, power, and even the idea of value were socially connected to men. Over hundreds and thousands of years, that social reality got baked right into the DNA of the language. Grammar itself started to link the masculine form with concepts like greatness and importance. And here's a perfect, real-world example of this in action. In Turkish folk language, you can find the phrase Allah Baba, which means God the Father, but you'll never hear Allah Ana, or God the Mother. And the reason for this is purely linguistic. The culture's mindset had so deeply shaped the language that the very concept of greatness became grammatically reserved for the masculine form. It made God the Mother a linguistic non-starter, not because of a theological rule, but a grammatical one. So we've got the history, which is a huge piece of the puzzle. But there's also a very specific nitty-gritty grammatical rule that really ties it all together. It's called the generic masculine, and it's basically where the masculine form gets assigned a second job. This is the big aha moment. In many of these languages, when you see the masculine form, it doesn't always mean male. It's more like a grammatical category that can wear two different hats, and you have to know which one it's wearing based on the context. Here's exactly how that two-hat system works. The feminine form is super specific. It only ever refers to the female. Simple enough. But the masculine form is much broader. Sure, it can refer to a male, but it also acts as the default, the generic, the catch-all term you use when gender is mixed, or when it's unknown, or, and this is the key for us, when it's completely irrelevant. Okay, so let's put all the clues together. We've looked at why it was a no-go, we've explored the ancient historical context, and we've just unpacked the specific grammatical rule of the generic masculine. So what's the bottom line? It all boils down to this.
Using he for God isn't a statement about God's gender. It's a linguistic convention, basically a workaround. It was a choice born from a need to show respect by avoiding the word it, and it simply followed the grammatical rules that were already in place, rules that had, over centuries, made the masculine form the default for expressing power, personhood, and generality.
And it's so important to realize these aren't just little habits we can easily change. This is the deep, foundational structure of a language, built up layer by layer over millennia. Trying to go in and surgically change something so fundamental is, well, it's a nearly impossible task. And that's why this convention is still so deeply embedded today.
So, this whole exploration leaves us with a much bigger, more profound thought to chew on. If our languages have these ancient social codes baked right into their grammar, what other ways are these old structures still quietly shaping how we see the world, how we categorize things, and how we perceive everything around us, right now, today? It's a pretty fascinating question about the hidden power of the words we inherit. Thanks for joining us for this explainer.